Hello and welcome to live coverage of the 2017 Audi R8 LMS Cup. Alongside me, as always, Sean Henshelwood. Sean, we're here in Suzuka, Japan for the first time in the Cup's history. What a great place to be.
Iconic's the word that comes up a lot because for the drivers, this is a real races circuit. It's one of those dramatic finishes to the Formula One season here over the many, many years. So really Suzuka is one that is going to be the highlight this season. Well,
we'll take a closer look at the track in a moment's time, but let's take a look at the highlights from the qualifying earlier this morning. We have had some racing already. The two qualifying sessions setting the grid for the first race today in just a few moments and tomorrow. And really it was Frankie Chung who was sixth in the first race, but he was the fastest man and he starts in pole for tomorrow.
Two practice sessions yesterday, 60-minute practice sessions. He was on top in both of them. Has never been here before, despite his immense experience in Asia. A number of drivers haven't been here before, and he was very good. There's a man who was very good too, Mitch Gilbert, second in both sessions by 2/100ths of a second. He's very disappointed with himself in the end. He said, I'd rather have been 3 or 4 seconds off. I just wanted to be there. It's so close. But he is going to feature in this race this weekend.
And then starting from pole position for today's race and third on the grid for tomorrow, Alessio Picariello, who is, of course, our points leader in the championship after Malaysia. So of those three, you think Alessio's got to start as the favourite, no?
Well, there's 3 pole positions back to back for Alessio Picariello. He really has been the sensation. I mean, we saw it at Sepang. He was the standout, there's no question. And he laid the foundation for a solid points haul, which puts him right in front coming to this weekend. And he's been quick again. You just can't fault this young guy. He's fantastic.
That's right. Well, we've had a lot of exciting action already. Just looking further down that qualifying grid, we've got Alex Young in 4th position after Picariello, Gilbert and Raquelme. Stefan Raquelme, a guest driver here from Monaco, did much better than he did actually in Malaysia, didn't he?
He did, and he was subbing for Will Stevens, the ex-British Formula One driver who is at Le Mans for a week-long stint. He couldn't be here, so Raquelme got the call in to sub again, super sub, and really has done a very, very good job. So,
well,
very good job.
Talking of the opening race weekend of the year, let's go back to Malaysia, Sepang, to see what happened in those first 2 races. And it was Alessio Picariello who led from the start and managed to hold on to pole position at a pretty crowded start.
He did a great job. He had to defend on the run down to turn 1, and of course under attack from Mitch Gilbert. We're just talking about him, just narrowly missed pole here this time. And of course the man who he battled for the 2016 title, that was of course Alex Young. We saw Martin Rump really starting to move forward early. He was one of the big movers there. He just takes Alex Young. Sean Thong, Alex Young's teammate, behind him, but then safety car. We'd had about a 5-second advantage for Alessio Picariello at that point. He was just streeting away from the field. Had to get his head together, do it again, rebuild that lead towards the second stanza of the race, and really did a good job.
And then the other big incident of the race was this one. There's Alex Young under pressure from young Sean Thong, flashing the headlights. And Alex, I don't know if he was thrown off by that, but spins out here, and that cost him a lot, even though he did get back into the points.
Things weren't going 100% for the 3-time champion. Didn't quite feel 100% comfortable with the car, but of course nearly 50% of the races he started in the Cup at Sepang he has won, and we saw him recover in the second one, but there was no denying who was going to be the man for that first race. He had pole for race 2, of course, 50 kilos success penalty as well to carry, and that slowed him down off the start. That allowed Alex Young to get the jump, and really there wasn't much more that Alessio Picariello could have done. A little bit further back in the field, a bit of contact going on, and this cost KOU a position, or a couple of positions at the end of the race. He was given a post-race penalty, but at the front of the field it was all about this man, Alex Young.
And it was good to see him bounce back from disappointment from that earlier skid in the first race. So the top 2 from last year, really, again, the top 2. And we can take a look at the standings after that first race weekend with Alessio, 45 points, 14 clear of Alex. It's significant, but of course it can all disappear very quickly. Martin Rump, Frankie Chung, Sean Thong rounding out the top 5. So, as I said, the top 2 are right back at it this year as well.
Well, I mean, you look at last year, they were the 2 standouts, weren't they? It was a real battle for most of this closing part of the season between Alex Young and Alessio Picariello. And the new season has started off with the 2 of them going head-to-head, which is fantastic. But before we get too far underway, Sophie is down on the grid with the new Director of Audi Sports Customer Racing Asia, Martin Kuhl.
Martin, welcome to the show this afternoon. It's a fantastic weather here and also a new circuit for Audi family this year. What is your take on today's race?
Yeah, first of all, we are all very excited about racing Suzuka for the very first time in the history of the Audi LMS Cup. It's a very technical circuit. almost all drivers are here for the first time in their life also. So you could really see from practice session up to qualifying, we have improving lap times all the way, and in the end the qualifying was very, very close. So we expect a very close race, and looking at the starting grid, I guess, I mean, the championship leader Alessio Picariello is on pole, so he's definitely one of the drivers to watch, but everything can happen, and as I said, as this is a new circuit for everybody, it depends also how quick the learning curve is for everybody.
Thank you so much, Martin, and all our viewers. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the race here in Suzuka for the 2017 Audi R8 LMS Cup. Now cross over to our panel.
Thank you.
Sophie, well, the weather has been pretty kind, although it was earlier in the week, but it's been clear and dry and warm, but not too oppressive.
Well, ideal conditions we saw in qualifying. The lap times were very, very good, and a big improvement on yesterday's practice time. So really, it is going to be a very interesting race. But this circuit is going to be particularly challenging for the drivers because it may look big, it's long, it's one of the longest in Asia, 5.8 kilometres, but it's very, very narrow. So that's going to present a number of challenges. So the position you want is you really want to be on pole position, and that's exactly what Alessio Picariello has done.
Well, you mentioned 5.8 kilometres. And pick out some of the key areas on the track. What should the fans be looking out for here, Sean?
Well, there's a lot. Certainly the first stanza of this lap, turns 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the S's up to turn 7, and you go through some fairly famous parts. See, 5.807 kilometres, 19 turns. This is a very testing part, but it flows very, very nicely. Up to the hairpin, a figure 8 layout, which is very, very rare in motorsport. The track goes back across itself through the tunnel, we'll see that, and then the crossover. And then the final chicane, we saw some classic moments between Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost many, many years ago. So this really does have a lot of stories, the Suzuka circuit.
And then, of course, with that crossover, some elevation is involved as well, which you don't often see.
You don't often see, and I think there's something like 90 metres of elevation change across this 5.8 kilometres. So it's really very, very good.
So just a few moments before we get underway on this first race weekend of here in Suzuka, Japan. Just a reminder, Alessio Picariello will be on pole position alongside his teammate Mitch Gilbert with Stefan Rakelmi and Alex Young, the three-time champion on the second row of the grid. Who else, looking further down the grid, do you think might be someone to look out for? Well, Sean, I'll get back to you in just a second, but before we answer that question, let's go and join Sophie, who is down on the grid with the head of the Tianxia Racing Team, Mr. Liu Pang.
陈总您好，欢迎来到我们今天的直播现场。那说到我们这一次呢，有陕西天使车队的战车，那同样我们也知道这支车队在国内呢，其实也有很好的表现。能跟我们说一下是如何将这种在国内的成功之路继续向国际的舞台上进行探索的呢？
这个也说不上成功啊。这个之前我们在国内也经历了几年的比赛，因为车队成立的时间不长，对于我们来讲，做车队来说，我们还是一支很年轻的车队。走到国际赛场上来，也主要是跟更高级别的比赛和选手在一起交流学习，互相这个学习的一个过程吧。
谢谢刘总啊，那也希望我们今天的这个陕西天使车队能够在第一场比赛当中能够取得非常好的成绩，也希望我们的陈维安带着陕西天使车队的这个实力征战这个我们的领路赛道。Thank you so much, Mr. Liu. Now let's cross over back to our panel.
Thanks very much, Sophie. And Sean, great to see new teams coming into the Cup with a very young driver, 21 years old, David Chen. What have you made of him so far?
He's been very impressive. I've seen a little bit of him in various championships across China last year. Only did cameo appearances, but made a cameo again in the TCR Asia Series earlier this year and was very, very impressive on debut with the Audi RS3 LMS. So good driver, and he's proven to be very, very handy this weekend in the AM Plus category. We'll explain a little bit more about that as the program goes on, but the Tianxia Racing Team really very, very famous in China. So they are one of those teams to keep a close eye on, and great to have them a part of this.
Well, just moments away from the first race of the season, and we can maybe take a look back at some of the big moments, exciting moments in the crash with some of in the Cup with some of the top 5 crashes.
9 laps to go. Currently, Alex Young. Oh, there you go! Just as I predicted! Frankie Chen, that is a big one.
And try and take the position away as we see a car into the wall quite heavily. That's a lot of frustration.
He's trying to push the pass. He goes straight past Frankie. And a disaster for Andre Kudo and Frankie Chen. Just what you didn't need.
Frankie Chen, oh, and the contact with Adley Fong. Oh, that is terrible. Adley Fong and Frankie Chen are out. Adley Fong, extremely disappointed.
Was Alex Young hoping to lay a quick time down in qualifying? Oh, he's hit the wall! That's a big smash here in qualifying in Macau. That could cost him the title. And amazingly walks away from that smash. Great to see him unharmed. Well, Sean, that was 2013, and it did cost him the title because he just needed a point, I believe, to win that, but he's been unbeatable since.
Well, we haven't been able to stop him. He should have won that championship. Of course, that was the third championship. We'd seen victories for Marchie Lee in 12, Adley Fong in 2013. That should have been the victory. In fact, that was the 13. That was the second season.
Yep.
That should have been Alex Young. But unfortunately for him, he's had to sit that one out, missed out, but has come back more strongly than ever and taken 3 championships out. So, looks like we have Sophie down there on the grid with the points leader, Alessio Picariello.
Alessio as the champion leader right now and starting from pole position with extra 35 kg in your cup. What is your strategy this afternoon?
Well, when you start from pole, you just want to win. I feel good. I mean, I don't know how the car will be with the 6S ballast, but I'm just really happy to be in Suzuka, actually. So I'm just going to enjoy this race and then we will see.
Good luck for you, Alessio. See you on the finish line. Back to our panel.
Well, it's been good to see Alessio Picariello and some of the other youngsters really take these cut by the scruff of the neck, and the competitive nature of these young drivers coming in have been very, very impressive. Alessio on pole position, but pretty disappointed that he wasn't better in the second qualifying session. He'll start from third on the grid for tomorrow's race. So some of the other drivers, that's Mitch Gilbert, and you can see the 20 kgs on the window there, of course, from the carryover from a last race in Malaysia, the Success Ballast. 50 kgs for the winner, 35 for second place, and 20 for that third place finisher. So that will be something to think about. There's the 50 kgs that Alex Young will be carrying. He starts from 4th position on the grid, so it's going to be pretty hard for him to maintain that and even get onto the podium positions. We have seen significant penalties. It certainly balances out the grid very well, and that's why Audi has brought in the Success Ballast. But it's certainly something to think about. It comes into the tactical thinking of the drivers. Of course, they want to win at all times, but it does mean you get that 50 kgs, which is pretty significant, particularly on the standing start, which we'll see tomorrow. But today it will be a rolling start. So you can see the formation lap will be starting in just 1 minute's time. And grid is getting cleared now. The doors will be closing, getting pretty hot inside those cars. Not the hottest track that we see in the circuit, but I can tell you that here in midday temperatures and early afternoon here in Suzuka, Japan, it is pretty warm. So they'll be in just a short 30-minute race, still pretty warm inside there. So Alessio Picariello will be starting from pole position alongside Mitch Gilbert, then Stefan Riquelme. Alex Young in 4th, Sean Thong, the young driver, starts in 5th position. Frankie Chung alongside him, 6th today, but he will be in pole position in tomorrow's race. Then David Chen in the AM Plus category is in 7th position. Marchie Lee alongside him. Martin Rump goes alongside Anthony Liu on the 5th row of the grid. Then KOU from South Korea. Kane Jiang, Rick Yoon, Burrit Kandi, and Jeffrey Lee.
And here we are going to get ready for a start for the first race at Suzuka International Circuit in Japan. 5.8 kilometres, the race distance, or the race journey, of course, for a single lap. 30 minutes, the race duration. And this is the third round of 12 for the 2017 season, the 6th season of the Audi R8 LMS Cup. And, of course, Alessio Picariello starts this one from pole position. The championship points leader. 1 winner, 1 second place result at the opening round in Malaysia back last month. and he really was a standout for the opening round of the championship for the MGT team by absolute. And you would have to say, even with that 50 kilo weight penalty, by virtue of having second, he had 35 kilo penalty. Alex Young will be carrying the 50 kilo weight penalty, and Mitch Gilbert will be carrying 20 kilograms of success ballast, they call it. And it will be interesting to see how much that 35 kilograms does affect Alessio Picariello. Of course, rolling start this time. He doesn't have to try and move that additional weight off a standing start as he did for the second race. Talking to him earlier today, he said that really did work against me, just moving that additional mass off the line, and that allowed Alex Young to just get ahead, and I really couldn't do much about it. Now, this looks like a fantastic circuit for good close racing. The drivers really have enjoyed the opportunity of being on one of the most famous Formula One venues of them all. But they admit quite openly that passing opportunities on this circuit, that's one of them there, but are very limited. There may be one, there may be two. Alex Young, of course, raced twice in his Formula One career here at Suzuka. In fact, the very final race of his F1 career was at this particular circuit. And he said, look, I think maybe there's two spots, but he said even at the hairpin, there is a braking opportunity. And you may be able to get up the inside of somebody, but you want to make it clear, but because your visibility out of these cars is very, very tight. Of course, they've got a head and neck system, what they call a hands device, to protect them in case of big accidents, and that's been a real lifesaver over many years. That does help limit their vision, their ability to turn their heads left to right for good peripheral vision. So they sit very low. It's a sports car. There's not a lot of rearward vision, so it's not difficult to see opportunities where contact may happen, especially in opportunities under brakes. So Alex's concern was if you were going to make a passing move, you had to make a definitive move. Otherwise, you could find yourself involved in contact. He was a bit disappointed. He said, I knew the best way to achieve this with 50 kilos was to be in front, make it difficult for them to the other drivers to get past me, and hold them a little bit at bay. The advantage now switches back to his 2016 rival, a man who sits on top of this championship point, the pole sitter, and that, of course, is Alessio Picariello. Mitch Gilbert, just moved across a little bit there on Riquelme. That was a little bit tight going into the chicane, and they're going to come across now onto the front straight here at Suzuka, ready for a start. And if the formation is good, the lights will be given, and that's going to be an interesting one to see. See the red lights on? We have Picariello left to screen, Mitch Gilbert right to screen, and we're underway here at Suzuka for the first race of the second event of the season for the Audi R8 LMS Cup. There's Alex Young on right of screen trying to get through. Alessio Picariello's trying to hold out his teammate, and he's been able to do that. Riquelme moved into position number 3, and Alex Young is now under fire from, a little bit of contact almost there from Sean Thong, his Phoenix Racing Asia teammate, and the young 21-year-old from Hong Kong is slipped into position number 5.
Well, it's a pretty interesting start there, Sean, and Gilbert had said to us before the race that he was pretty confident about the rolling start, not so confident about tomorrow's standing start. It looked like he might have got the jump there on Alessio for a moment, but Alessio had the line into that first corner.
Picariello did everything he needed to do to just hold that line and protect into turn 1. We were just talking about how narrow the circuit is. Going around the outside there into turn 1 isn't necessarily the place to go, unless, of course, you can hold it all the way through. But against another driver you're so closely matched to on performance as they cross under the circuit, partway around this lap of the Suzuka International Circuit, there wasn't going to be any great opportunity there for Gilbert to do much more than he did. Picariello, pitch perfect. That's what he needed to do to retain the front running. So it's Picariello, Mitch Gilbert, Stefan Riquelme from Monaco in the green car, the Castrol car. Alex Young, the reigning champion, the number 1 Audi R8 LMS Cup car. Sean Thong in the Tita Racing colours that we saw Alex Young run for so many seasons. Frankie Cheng, who was the pace setter and the pole man for tomorrow's race, in position number 6. Position 7, very impressive too. We're talking about the Tianxia Racing team, and that is David Chen, who's also leading the AM Plus class.
Well, already Alessio Picariello from that pole position, opening up a little bit of a gap at the front on just the opening lap. He's so strong, and it's the same thing that we saw at the in Malaysia last race stop.
Oh, David Chen, very, very wide in the Tianxia racing car. But one driver who's managed to get in front of him is Marchi Lee. And we take a quick replay of the start, and you could see that Gilbert, as you say, Mark Dreyer, he may well have just slightly gotten ahead on that run into turn 1. But of course, Picciarello had the race line, so he was able to control the start. And then it was Sean Thong under fire, taking on his teammate, and of course one of his mentors, and that is the man in front of him on screen there. That was Alex Young. So a good job too by the Audi Tita Racing Team driver.
Well, one of the changes in the first lap, we got Marchi Lee moved up, overtaking David Chen to get into 7th position. But the top 6 of Picciarello, Gilbert, Riquelme, Yung Tong and Frankie Chung remain the same from the start. So competitive, and as he said, there are some overtaking opportunities on this track, but also some pretty narrow sections.
Well, it's very limited overtaking opportunities, and we'll see just whether that comes into play. We haven't seen much. We didn't see where Marchi was able to get through, but the opportunities here are limited. The pace of these cars, of course, essentially is identical. So they're all a one-make car on a same tyre, and the performance of them can be adjusted marginally, but that's through things like aerodynamics and tyre pressures and little things like that. And that's where you're going to try and get your advantage. So it's the experienced teams, like the team that is leading this race, of course, Absolute Racing behind Alessio Picciarello, that's where you're going to have some of your advantage.
Now, of course, they do have the same pace, but where that does change. Oh, and that's the number 77 car of Rick Yoon. And he looks like he's going to be able to get back onto the track if he can. Bit of a ledge there, but hopefully he can rejoin. But a bit of a setback there for the KCMG man.
Well, that's the AM leader from the first round of the championship. Of course, he took victory at Sepang in the maximum points in the AM class. So that'd be a little bit of frustration for the KCMG driver. Of course, shares in the Blancpain GT Series Asia with the man on the left of screen or right of screen there, just taking David Chen. And that, of course, is Martin Rump, the young Estonian who won 4 times last year. Oh, it's getting really racist. KOU now up the inside of David Chen. Oh! And we have contact. Well, we're talking about visibility out of these cars. It's very tight. Martin Rump had no idea KOU was going to fire up the inside, and unfortunately, that's now put a guard onto a tyre, and that's going to give a whole range of additional problems now to KOU. So he needs to be very, very careful that that doesn't cause a tyre deflation. So position change there. That is Anthony Liu in the 37 car, the silver, blue and red car. Looks very much like Jeffrey Lee. Jeffrey's a little bit further back in this field. David Chen now has taken the position back from KOU, but that contact seems to have slowed down the South Korean driver, and he was very impressive during practice here yesterday. Was running right at the top of the timesheets at one stage, but the Phoenix Racing Asia driver, I think, has a few issues to contend with. Now we're looking at Martin Rump, who was part of that move and part of that contact. Essentially a brand new car, Mark Dreyer. He had a big incident during the second event of the Blancpain GT Series Asia in Thailand, in Buriram, just a few weeks back, and that required a lot of structural work on that car, new engine, new gearbox, and the KCMG team have had to work very hard over the last couple of days to get Martin Rump into this field and competitive. So he'll work his way more towards the front of the field.
That's right. Well, Martin obviously set back his preparation coming into this race weekend here in Suzuka, Japan. In that incident there with KOU, he sort of cut the corner because he had nowhere else to go. So it'll be interesting to see what the stewards make of that, if there is something perhaps harsh to penalise him. But he certainly did cut off a little bit of distance on the track in that particular moment.
He certainly did. 2 of the leading charges for the Audi R8 LMS Cup in Asia on screen there. Bernd Gers, who's the former director of the Audi Sport Customer Racing Department in Asia, handing across to Martin Kuhl, who of course has been with the Cup right since the very beginning as a communications man for Audi China, and Martin will take over as of this event for the Cup. So let's take a look, and we might be able to see exactly what happened down at the chicane there with those drivers, but that was an area, of course, where we saw a classic moment back in the late 80s, early 90s between Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna. The 2 greats of Formula One came to contact at the chicane. A similar sort of scenario, but that was for a World Formula One Championship. So we have seen contact there in the past. On screen, Alex Young, championship points leader, the number 1 car. Oh, and there is Frankie Cheng. He's looking a little bit racy. And I said to Frankie, what was it about this circuit that had him on the top of the timesheets yesterday in practice? He said, I just like the nature of the circuit. It really suits me. Sean Thong was another who was second fastest in both sessions yesterday, who said, I just like the fast-flowing nature of this. It's tight, it's fast-flowing. There's some very fast high-speed corners, and it's relatively dangerous because the runoff areas just don't exist. We're looking at Mitch Gilbert on screen, second position, 3.5 seconds off race leader Alessio Picariello.
That's right, so it's a pretty significant gap. It's quite close between 2, 3, 4, 5, really down to sort of 8th position there with Martin Rump, but Picariello, 3.5 seconds now, he's opened up at the front. As I said, a repeat of what happened in the first race of the season, but then he lost that 5-second or so lead with a safety car. Of course, anything can happen in these races. We don't hope for crashes to happen, but that lead can evaporate in a moment if something should prompt the safety car to come out while the track is cleared. So he'll be hoping at least that it is he'll be free and clear all the way to the checker flag. It's just 30 minutes. We're coming up to about the 1/3 point of this race. And the Belgian, who is already the points leader, looking to extend that gap at the top of the championship.
We did surmise at the opening round at Sepang how he must have been feeling when he'd lost a 5-second lead. You can see just how hard he's working there as the car gets a little squirrely under brakes, the back steps out. But how he would recover from that. And let's have a look at this replay. Big late dive by KOU. And of course, David Chen pulled out of that in the green, gold and red car. And what they didn't see at that moment was that Martin Rump too, and he had, I noticed, just in that shot, he had the guard rubbing on the tyre too. So the Pirelli DHC getting a little bit of hard work on the right rear of Martin Rump's Champion Racing Team car, of course prepared by KCMG. We're just talking about how it had been involved in a big incident a couple of weeks ago in Thailand. The team have got them sorted out and running right back in this field, and currently Martin Rump holding on to position number 8.
Well, a couple of moves just to tell you about Sean Thong moving up into 4th position, passing Alex Young. Marchie Lee passing Frankie Chung into 6th position. So Marchie started down after a pretty disappointing qualifying in 8th, but he's already up 2 positions, and he'll be hoping to carry that perhaps into the podium positions. But at the front, Alessio Picariello now 4 seconds clear of Mitch Gilbert in 2nd.
It's perhaps no surprise, of course, as we're looking at Jeffrey Lee, the J-Fly Racing Team boss. One of the veterans of the Cup has started 61 starts in the 63 events that we've had across the last 5 and a bit seasons. So Jeffrey Lee is currently right up there in the AM Plus classification because he won it at Sepang last time out and is the reigning AM Cup champion for the Audi R8 LMS Cup. Talking about the 2 drivers at the front of this field, they both drive for the Absolute Racing operation. And there's an important point here, of course, Mark, with the fact that they are able to share their data. And that makes them both quicker. In fact, it was interesting at Sepang, Mitch Gilbert made the observation. He said, I didn't know much about this young Belgian guy until I became his teammate. And he said, I looked at his data and, whoa, this kid is seriously good. And of course, we expected a lot of big things out of Mitch Gilbert, and he hasn't failed to deliver, I have to say.
So going back into the history of the Cup, it used to be open data, so every driver could see the data in terms of the braking and the speed of all the drivers on the practice sessions and all throughout the races, and you could match yourself against the race leader. Now with the different service teams, you can only compare the data within those teams. So when you've got the top 2, Picariello and Gilbert, in the same Absolute Racing team, of course, they can push each other. And Alex Young and Sean Thong, for example, in 3rd and 4th currently, don't get to see that data. So that could is definitely an advantage for the top 2.
Absolutely. Well, here's an interesting move. Here's the 2 old stagers, the veterans, Alex Young and Marchie Lee. They've been at this since the very first season of the Audi R8 LMS Cup back in 2012. And back then, Mark, of course, there were some famous moments of the 2 of them coming together all the time. Now, of course, it's a little bit different. They're both in the same team. And one of the 2 of these is the team boss of the team. So he'd be very mindful that they don't get too carried away.
It doesn't matter where Marchie Lee is on the grid. It's always interesting to watch it because he's always giving it everything. Doesn't always come off for him, it must be said, but he's pulled up 2 places, pushing very, very hard on Alex Young to try and get into 5th. And then, of course, all the way up to Stefan Merkelmi in 3rd. It's pretty tight between those places. So, let's see how far this charge can take Marchie.
We're talking about Marchie Lee. Didn't qualify as well as perhaps he could have done. In fact, he qualified 8th for this race, qualifies 9th for round 4, which comes tomorrow. And, this could be an opportunity at the hairpin. Has Alex Young? No, he hasn't. I was going to say, has Alex Young moved over to let the team boss through? I don't think so. Not when you're second in the championship. He might have given Marchi a little bit of hope and a bit of a sniff, but now, of course, he's got Frankie Chung closing in under his rear wing of the Audi Hong Kong car. So that's going to be something else for him to think about, but who knows? They've certainly been great competitors, but Marchi was saying to me just before the race that he said, I just wasn't comfortable with the setup of the car. It wasn't 100% right. Sean Thong and teammate Alex Young said much the same thing. They admitted that they haven't had as much experience on the DHC compound Pirelli control tyre that some of their rivals have, because we run on a Pirelli control tyre with the Blancpain GT Series Asia, but it is a different tyre. So Alex Young was saying we're just not quite in the window where we want to be on setup, but we feel we race better than we qualify. The problem with that, of course, is on a tight, narrow circuit, if you don't qualify near the front, you may not be able to make up too many positions. And that's one of the things that they need to consider. But one that is doing a good job, I have to say, is the Audi Tita Racing Team entry of Sean Thong up into position 4 and looking very racy on the rear of Stefan Riquelme.
Now at the front, Alessio Picariello, 4.8 seconds now in the lead, so about where he was when that safety car came out, as we mentioned. And it's a bit of a tactical battle because they have the push-to-passes, that extra boosts that the drivers get throughout. Do you, now that he's away and clear, does he keep some in reserve in case he needs to use them for a restart? Or do you try and really solidify that lead and use them now while you can?
Well, that's an important return feature of the Audi R8 LMS Cup this year. We didn't have it last year. See the bright number 2 on the back window, just behind the front window of the number 1 Audi R8 LMS Cup car. You see it, bright red number 2. That is the number of push to pass that Alex Young has left in reserve. The pro drivers, or the drivers certainly at the front of this field that aren't in the AM classification, only have 5 push to pass that they can use. It's an additional 50 horsepower for up to 10 seconds that they can use to give themselves an additional advantage to maybe make a passing move stick or to keep up with somebody, or certainly off the start you would have seen all of them starting to flash as they were on the push to pass to get some kind of advantage. So keep a look on those, close eye on those numbers rather, and you will be able to tell who's where. And there's Mark Dry sitting beside me trying to work out just how many Frankie Cheng and Marchi Lee have left.
It looks like Marchi has 4, so if he can use some of those and really make a push on Alex Young in these closing laps and take another position. But it's fantastic for the viewers. We get to see. It's probably harder for the drivers to see because it is out that side rear mirror rather than the window rather than at the back. But certainly an exciting new feature in the Cup this year.
Well, certainly we spoke to the drivers after Sepang and said, how did you go watching what your rivals were doing with push to pass? And they said, well, I tell you, we were making our lines into some of the corners a little bit wider so we could see just what was displayed on the side of the cars, because then we knew how many they had left, whether they had an advantage, whether we had to do something dramatic. But they said it was really good. In fact, they got to the point where they're doing mathematics in their heads, trying to work out where they could use it and how it would be of a greater advantage. And that just adds another interesting element. Now, the interesting thing here is the AM classification and the AM Plus drivers have 2 to 3 times more amount of push to pass than the leading drivers, so they can use that to come forward. They're 4 on the side too of Frankie Chung, who's really closed in now on the rear of the car of Marchi Lee, the number 88 Audi Hong Kong car.
And just behind this trio of 5, 6 and 7, well, actually the AM Plus driver of Anthony Leo, who has, of course, as you said, more push to passes, he's just moved up past Martin Rump, one of the pro drivers, into 8th position. So again, they're in a different class, but he does have that extra advantage to level it out between the different classes with the extra push to passes.
He certainly does, and of course he has a bit of work ahead of him though. He's up 3.1 seconds now down on Frankie Cheng, who's just immediately behind these guys, of course. And it looks like Stefan Riquelme's making some sort of move there on the rear of the OD racing car of Mitch Gilbert. It's only 9/10 of a second, in fact it's probably less than that now. Sean Thong seems to have dropped back just a little bit more from where he was on Riquelme. The pace isn't bad. I mean, fastest lap so far appears to have been Alessio Picariello, 2:04 dead. Of course, we're talking about a qualifying pole time of a 2:02.7. On a circuit of this length, to be doing a 2:04 right now under these conditions, yes, he may have used push to pass to achieve that, but that's very, very impressive. The interesting thing about that qualifying time, of course, is he did that without the ability to use push to pass. Big battle looming behind this group too.
And that fastest lap from the leader, Alessio Picariello, done in the second lap of the race. We've completed 7 laps now. We were just a little bit over halfway. And of course, that's the tyres get up to speed pretty quickly. But how do they carry on as we get towards the back end of the race, Sean?
Well, it depends on your tyre management. One of the things we were just alluding to earlier in this race, of course, is that one of the variables that you can adjust to change the performance of your car is tyre pressures. What adjusting your tyre pressures either way, too low, too high, can do, though, is increase your tyre wear. So they have to balance that versus being able to get the tyres up to temperature, and as they come up to temperature, they have greater grip. So it can be a couple of laps before they are at optimal operating temperature. That's why you see them weave before the start of a race, or certainly during a safety car period. Tyre temperature is vital. Your tyre pressure adjusts that. But of course, the cost for that is that you may increase your tyre wear. Now, I haven't heard a lot of talk this weekend about massive tyre wear at the Suzuka circuit. Of course, they have enough tyres to use in their tyre bank to ensure that they have fresh rubber for both races, but they can also tear them up during practice, official practice, and qualifying. They can adjust how many sets of tyres they use depending on what they want to achieve. Now, it could be that Alessio Picciarello's used fresh tyres for both qualifying legs, which doesn't give him fresh tyres for race 2. These are all the variables that come into the equation. Again, we haven't heard a lot of talk about massive tyre wear here. The temperatures are quite nice. It's the low 20s. It's nice and clear. Let's just see how this race goes on. But I'm not sure that tyres are going to be a big issue in this race.
Well, this is the battle just going through the screen for 2, 3 and 4. And Stefan Rakelmi in the green car in third position has 4 push-to-passes left with Mitch Gilbert ahead of him, just 2 remaining. Certainly no point in driving back into the garage with any left in the tank. So we can expect Rakelmi to try and make a charge and get into second position before this race is over. But that's the man in the lead now, 5.5 seconds ahead of Mitch Gilbert in second, Alessio Picciarello, and another textbook race from the Belgian.
How impressive has he been? We saw him line up. He was an entry to the very final stages of the opening round of the 2016 season. We hadn't heard much of him. Of course, you had been involved in the Formula Masters China Series. He'd come in partway through the 2015 season and won a huge amount of races. Of course, he'd won the European leg, the German leg of the Formula Masters, so he knew about open wheelers. Against Martin Rump. Martin Rump was the champion of Formula Masters China Series in 2015. The two of them came into the Cup last year, and certainly we saw Martin Rump win 4 times. Very, very impressive performance. But Alessio Picciarello was right in the championship from the outset. Very smart driver. That's one thing I was talking to Alex Young about a little bit earlier today, is that he admitted that these guys are quite young. Alessio and Mitch were the 2 that he was talking about, but he said they're very intelligent drivers. And I did point out that there was a certain Alex Young that was much like that when he was a younger driver, and he's still very much like that now. Takes on board a lot of data, does a lot of work physically, mentally. They're true racing drivers. In fact, we spoke to Alessio Picciarello over at the museum here at Suzuka just yesterday about his knowledge of this circuit and the Formula One era of Prost and Senna, which was before he was born. So they're real students of the sport of motor racing, and they're very, very serious about it. And certainly Alessio Picciarello has been a real standout and has been a very intelligent driver. I only saw him win 1 race last year, but he only lost the championship by a single point to a driver that won 3 times.
That's right, very, very consistent. Martin Rump, of course, won 4 races, but was then in third place because he'd had some races where he didn't finish. Now, just looking at the leaderboard, Alex Young in 5th position, just set a fastest lap, so with 50 kilos in the car, still going there he is, doing very, very well with a couple of push-to-passes remaining.
Having said that, he's also 1.2 seconds off the outright fastest lap of Alessio Picciarello. So that's the disadvantage of that additional 50 kilograms. This circuit probably not quite so obvious because you can keep your pace up. It flows quite nicely. There's not a lot of stop-start style corners where you're braking really heavily, pulling down to second gear, maybe even first gear, and having to charge back out again. That's where the weight is going to have a greater benefit. That's also something that will affect your tyre wear. Now on screen, here's Martin Rump battling with David Chen from the Tianxia racing team. And we're talking about the 2 of them earlier. Sadly for Martin Rump, because they've had to rebuild this car, I mean, he may be suffering some dramas from the contact that we saw at this point of the circuit a little bit earlier in the race. The team have had to focus on rebuilding his car after that incident in Thailand, and that has cost them valuable time because Martin Rump's never raced here before, to be able to actually set the car up properly. So that's why he is not battling further forward in this field, I feel.
That's right. Rump currently in 9th position, and either side a couple of AM Plus drivers, Anthony Leong and David Cheng, a youngster. But Anthony Leong has some pretty strong history, and he's had some fantastic races. Not far off the pros in any way, is he?
Well, in fact, he and teammate Davide Rizzo won the very first event of the new Blancpain GT Series Asia in Malaysia. So a very experienced campaigner, won a lot of GT Asia Series races over many years, driving a different product to this one, but certainly with his teammate Davide Rizzo. And there's some comments that have come out of Italy, certainly in the past, that had he wanted to, that Anthony Liu was probably capable of making the top level of motorsport as a true champion. But of course, he's a businessman, like so many other of the drivers in this field. This isn't their core business. For drivers like Marchi Lee, Sean Thong, Alex Young, they are professional drivers. This is their industry. This is their job. Same for Alessio Picariello now and Mitch Gilbert. But for many of the drivers, Jeffrey Lee and certainly Anthony Liu, David Chen, further down, Kane Zhang, we haven't spoken too much about him, Burat Birambaki, they're business people. This is their passion. This is their hobby. So to see them racing so competitively is very, very impressive.
And you mentioned just a moment ago the Blancpain series, and one of the advantages is so many of the drivers in this series also competing in Blancpain on some of the same tracks. It gives them more time in the car, gets to know the circuit, whether the Blancpain or the Audi Cup comes first or not. Just in the other one, they're really able to benefit by feeding off the experience that they get in the parallel series.
Oh, that's Alex Young. Alex Young's off the circuit. There was a little bit of smoke. Is there some damage to the rear of his car? We saw a spin for the three-time champion, of course, at Sepang. We saw the replay of that a little bit earlier in this program, and wonder what the drama may have been there. But he's fallen back into the clutches of Anthony Liu. Oh, big lurid spin. That is quite unusual.
Well, he got back onto the track, and you could see him just before we hit the replay that he was flashing, trying to use that push-to-pass to hold off Anthony Liu. So let's see if he is able to do so, because the number 37 car was pushing hard as Alex was desperately trying to get back up to speed.
It shows you just how close this competition is, and just how classy the field is when you've got a reigning champion, a former Formula One driver who has had experience at this circuit before, battling in the middle of the pack. So these guys at the front of this field are really turning on a very, very good performance.
And what it does mean that Marchi Lee, who started up down in 8th position, now up into 5th. And we said that with those push-to-passes that he had, perhaps he was putting the champion under pressure. I would have to see a little bit more of the replay, but there is Marchi Lee, still with 2 push-to-passes remaining. He's a little bit further back, for about 4 seconds off 4th place at the moment, so 5th place might be as far as he gets for now, but we'll see how he goes.
I think we'll have some very interesting onboards from the CTVS team. Of course, you can follow all of the action from the Audi R8 LMS Cup online. The website, www.audi R8 LMS Cup, and of course search for Audi R8 LMS Cup on both Facebook and Instagram. All the information you need, photos, everything, video clips, the whole thing is there. You can keep up to date with everything that's going on all the behind the scenes action, and of course we will find out as we go and look at some of the footage. You can see the flashing lights, that is the push to pass. These drivers, of course, that's Riquelme and Sean Thong, are using that opportunity as we get into the final stages of this race. As you say, there's no sense coming back into pit lane with push to pass to spare. 2 left now for Riquelme, and quite likely 2 left for Sean Thong, who could obviously see that Riquelme was trying to get away and thought, you're not going without me, son. I'm going to lock in under your rear wing and do exactly the same thing. He's back on it again. Riquelme coming onto the front straight. In fact, checkered flag time. Well, what a big win for Alessio Picariello. That is massive. 7 seconds up. And Stefan Riquelme, a very good job for him to be in position number 3. Sean Thong position 4, and Marchi Lee. That's fantastic.
Well, there was an action-packed race as always, and lots to happen. And KOU actually up into 10th towards the end of the field, overtaking David Chen into 10th place towards the end. So that was an extra place for him.
And here's the race winner. That is 2 race wins. He's already doubled his tally from the 2016 season. And victory again for Alessio Picariello. His teammate Mitch Gilbert across the line in position number 2 in the number 86 OD racing car. There is the 39 car of Kane Zhang making his debut in the Audi R8 LMS Cup. A experienced GT campaigner. And he's pulled into pit lane. Hope he doesn't have any dramas there. And thank you, Mark Dreyer, for your assistance. Nice to see Alessio Piccarello, the young Belgian, second in the championship last year, won only one race. We're just going through that. He is carrying 35 kilograms of success ballast from the last race, race 2, round 2 of the championship from Sepang. He will carry 50 kilos of success ballast into race 2 tomorrow. Make sure you join us, but of course we've got a lot left in this live program here for you this afternoon from Suzuka. Great to be back at the scene of the Japanese Formula One Grand Prix, iconic, with the Ferris wheel in the background there. Lots of parts of the circuit you can see the Ferris wheel in the background, but there'll be plenty of celebration going on for Alessio Piccarello, although he certainly knows that he has another race coming through tomorrow afternoon, or tomorrow morning rather, and he will be making very sure that he is ready for that and to continue to build on his championship. But he had a handy lead coming into this round. What better way to protect that lead than to take another victory? Of course, his Audi Racing, Absolute Racing teammate, Mitch Gilbert, another good haul of points. That'll certainly help the young Malaysian driver. And nice result too for Stefan Riquelme, but as a guest driver he won't actually score championship points. The guest drivers don't have championship points accrued, so that will also be handy points then for Sean Thong, who of course was on the podium in the first race at Sepang, the Audi Hong Kong driver racing for the Audi TIDA racing team. Marchie Lee, position number 5, inheriting that position from his teammate and championship points leader. Championship points leader is Alessio Piccarello, the man on screen. But the 3-time champion, the reigning champion, of course, Alex Jung. Here is Alessio Piccarello, the young Belgian. Fantastic result for him. And yes, pleased he should be. Martin Kuhl there to meet him. In background, David Chen's just pulled in. He will take second in the AM Plus classification. The winner of AM Plus will be Anthony Liu, finishes position number 8 outright in the 37 car. Third overall in the AM Plus classification is Jeffrey Lee, who was the winner last time out in Malaysia. Plenty of media attention for the young Belgian, Alessio Piccarello. The AM class winner this time out, Burit Birembakti, and that will be popular news, of course, in Thailand for the Plan B Singer Motorsport driver. A little bit of experience too in GT3 competition. See how lovely the weather here is at Suzuka. Beautiful place for a race, and of course a fantastic weekend. Second for the race for the AM class is Sunjing Zhu. Let's take a look back at how round 3 of the 2017 Audi R8 LMS Cup played out. It was a great race. So everybody ready on the grid. Weather conditions fantastic. Here was your pole man. 3 pole positions in a row. And off the line, he had a challenge from Audi Racing's Mitch Gilbert on right of screen, but he was able to retain the lead into turn 1, and of course nowhere to go around the outside there for Mitch Gilbert. The best he could do was slip into position 2 as Alex Jung had to play second fiddle to the green car, the Castrol Racing car of Stefan Riquelme. Then we had an off. That's further back for Rick Yoon. The replay was able to get through without making any contact with the wall. And that was a good recovery for the driver who took the top AM points last time out. Now here was the big contact. Unsighted was KOU down the inside at the chicane, and that forced Martin Rump off, and that's not the way Martin Rump wanted to start this race. Right rear guard rubbing on a tyre, left rear guard for KOU from the Phoenix Racing Asia team. But ultimately it was the man in front that continued to extend his lead, was Alessio Piccarello. Mitch Gilbert there, the 86 car in position 2, the Absolute Racing team watching on, very happy with their performance. And this was a very unusual one for the man who has won 3 championships, the most winning driver in the history of the Cup. Nearly 1 in 3 races have gone to that man, Alex Young, but a big spin. We saw it too in Malaysia, but he also recovered in race 2 in Malaysia to come away with a big haul of points as the victor. His 22nd victory in the Audi R8 LMS Cup, the 3rd victory ever for Alessio Picciarello, and an extension of what is already a very strong championship points lead for the young Belgian driver. Mitch Gilbert across the line second. Great drive by Stefan Riquelme to be in position number 3. And then it was Sean Thong and Marchi Lee. Frankie Chung hung on to position number 6, and a very happy young Belgian celebrating with the Audi Sport Customer Racing Asia team boss, of course, Martin Kuehl. Martin Rump, position 8, behind Anthony Liu. We saw the drama for the champion racing team driver at the chicane mid-race after that big dive down the inside for KOU. Again, visibility was the issue. That's one of few opportunities to make a passing move on this circuit. KOU, of course, recovered for position 10 behind Martin Rump. David Chen, second in the AM Plus classification, position number 11. Jeffrey Lee, position 12 outright, and 3rd in the AM Cup. That will extend his championship points lead in that category. Burit Birambakti for Singer Plan B Motorsport, position number 13. You can see the results there on screen. Alessio Picciarello taking the victory by more than 7 seconds. Mitch Gilbert and Stefan Riquelme, positions 2 and 3. So further back in the field, Kane Jung on his debut in the Audi Cup, 4th overall in the AM Plus classification. Sun Jing Zhu, position number 15, and Rick Yoon after that off early in the race, fortunately without any contact, the KCMG driver who shares a car with Martin Rump in the Blancpain GT Series Asia. He will round out the field in position number 16. There is the iconic view of the Suzuka International Circuit, host of the Japanese Formula One Grand Prix for all but 2 years since 1987. And of course, that part of the circuit, the chicane, was where we saw those classic moments between Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost in the late 80s, early 90s that saw some very controversial championship victories. And it has been a big part of the folklore of Formula One here at Suzuka. And of course, many of the drivers in this Audi R8 LMS Cup field have been pointing that out as we have arrived here over the last couple of days. And they know what the history of the circuit is, and certainly one, being Alessio Picciarello, the championship points leader, was big on his history. He said, I know what this means. Stefan Riquelme up to position 3, guest driver. Great job, the former GP2 competitor. Drives for Team WRT, of course, in the Blancpain Series in Asia. The Malaysian-based Australian, he's often classified Australian, that is Mitch Gilbert, and there is your race winner. Second time this year from 3 rounds, from pole position, championship points leader, Alessio Picciarello. Bernd Gers, the outgoing director of Audi Sport Customer Racing Asia, presents the trophy to the winner, Alessio Picciarello. Likewise now to Mitch Gilbert, and of course for Stefan Riquelme, the Castrol Racing Team driver for this weekend, subbing for Will Stevens. He will take position number 3 for this race. Ken Gakita from Pirelli to the pole sitter. That, of course, was Alessio Picciarello, the second one for him so far, in fact, third one for him so far this year. 3 pole positions, 3 fastest laps, in fact, because he set the fastest lap of this race, and 2 race wins and a second place finish. That's not a bad way to start your season against what is arguably the toughest field in the 6-year history of the Audi R8 LMS Cup.
Thank you, and again, congratulations to the drivers. Thank you.
Well, another win for Alessio Piccirillo, the Belgian, really showing why he is what we thought was probably the favourites coming into this season, even though three-time champion Alex Young, of course, is a serious threat. But Alex Young had a little bit of difficulty today, and we'll be speaking to some of the drivers up here in just a few moments' time. But just to recap some of the positions, of course, we just saw the top three. Alessio Piccirillo winning pretty comfortably. No safety car incidents, as we saw in Malaysia at the opening race of the year earlier this season. From Mitch Gilbert in second, Stefan Rakelmi, a very promising comeback, really, from him after a more disappointing race for him in the opening race weekend in Malaysia. So let's keep bringing you some shots from the podium, and this is the AM Plus category with Jeffrey Lee on the right-hand side of the screen, finishing in 12th overall, but third in the AM Plus category with David Chen, and the man on the top, Anthony Liu, will take the honours in the AM Plus class. So three very good performances from these guys. Anthony beating two of the pros. He finished in 8th overall ahead of Martin Rump and KOU. Martin Rump, of course, 4 victories last season. So that's the kind of caliber that this man, Anthony Liu, has. He does, of course, have a slight benefit with a few more push to passes around this field, but over the 30 minutes or so of the race, that is pretty small benefit, and obviously a very solid performance from Mr. Liu. Gathering the other two onto the top step for the photos and the champagne in just a moment. And, well, we've had some pretty good races. So the poses there, everyone just soaking up the attention after the race. And Sean, good to have you. Good to have you back up here. A little bit of a run for you, but well, it was a great opening race here in Suzuka, Japan.
It was exactly what you wanted to see for a debut event of such a storied, historic venue, and good start too for Alessio Piccirillo, and an extension of the championship points lead. He couldn't be any happier, but no doubt we'll hear from the drivers very, very soon.
Well, we'll have one more podium to bring you, and then we can try and speak to some of those drivers, get their thoughts on exactly what went on around this coast. And here we are in third position in the AM class. That's Rick Yoon on the right-hand side. Just walking up now is Mr. Sun Jing Zhe. Oh, sorry, apologies, we're just reaching the position slightly. Rick Yoon, of course, just completing 2 laps, so doesn't make the podium in this particular occasion. But Sun Jingzhou on the left-hand side with Burrum Bakdi from Thailand, winning the amateur class here in Suzuka for round 3 of the Audi R8 LMS Cup.
Nice result for Burrum Bakdi, and a good result for the Thai driver. And he'll be very happy, of course, with that. Good to see Sun Jingzhou made it. He was not well enough to make qualifying, but certainly he has made the podium, and that'll be perfect for him.
Now, congratulations again to all the winners. Thank you. Thank you for joining us in Audi R8 Cup. Thank you.
Well, we're pleased to be joined by the third place driver, Stefan Rakelmi. Stefan, pretty good performance from you. You must be pretty happy. Definite improvement after Malaysia, where you were, I think, a little bit disappointed with that. But certainly on the podium here, how was it for you?
For sure, it's really good to be back on the podium, especially that since the beginning of the year, I'm having a tough year. I mean, I'm also driving in the Blancpain Endurance, and we couldn't make the race in Monza after a crash. Then in Silverstone, we were among the last. So then I was in Sepang, it was not so much better. So it's good to be on the podium. That's the first thing. And I think now the team did a good job since Sepang. For sure, when you arrive in a new championship, you don't expect to be in the front, but we are still struggling a lot. So here is getting a bit better. I mean, a lot better. We're still not at the really top, but the podium is really good, and we keep pushing, and we see for the rest.
Now, just talk about the track here in Suzuka, Japan, an iconic circuit that we mentioned before the race. How is it from a driver's perspective?
To be honest, it's really a great track. I mean, I drive a lot in Europe. You got a track like Spa or Silverstone, but here it's more old school track with gravel trap and only grass, and makes the job of a driver much more difficult. And I think it's really nice to still have a track like this in the world. So.
Is it one of those circuits that really rewards a driver, perhaps more than some of those circuits you compete on in Europe? And certainly the flowing nature seems to be one of those things that drivers prefer more than the stop-start style circuits.
I mean, definitely when you have only gravel trap around the track, you cannot make any mistakes, so it makes the work a bit harder. But then, I mean, on each track, it's you need to have the proper balance, proper setup, and the good team to make everything going, even if the track is from the outside easier. But I mean, as a driver, for sure, we enjoy more driving here than on other track.
Stefan, thank you very much. We'll let you go and call off before the press conference. Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, that was a good result for him, certainly, as you say, after Sepang, where it was probably a little bit more challenging. But new teams, new setups, getting on top of things too. And it isn't, we've seen it before, it isn't just easy for top-level professional drivers from Europe to come into championships like this and expect to be instantly at the top of the field. We've seen it before. It has been a challenge, so he's certainly done a good job. That's a nice way to get a result. And here's someone else who probably needs to be smiling a little bit more.
Mr. Mitch Gilbert, second place. What was the highlight of the race for you today?
The finish, to be honest, I was quite happy to be over, like for the race to be over with. I didn't have any pace really at all, which is yeah, it's quite annoying. That's why I haven't got the biggest smile on my face. Obviously, I'm happy to finish second, but you don't really want to be dominated by your teammate. You know, that's never fun. But yeah, it's all right, and I finished second, and you know, I'm clawing my way back into the front of the championship.
So second again, you'll start in tomorrow's race. What do you have to do to go one better?
Honestly, I have no idea. I'm glad it's not Alessio in front of me, that's for sure. But I know that Frankie's going to be quick. I need to go have a look tonight what I need to do better, because I need to be quite a lot better than that. Otherwise, I'll probably struggle to even finish second again. So, yeah, I got a lot to do tonight, a lot of work to do, and then hopefully I can get back where I was in quali.
You almost looked as if you got the jump on him at the start. It seemed like you were just marginally in front, but of course you had the outside going into turn one. Was that really the only opportunity you think you had to make a move on Alessio?
Not really. I mean, it was funny. We were talking in the podium, and he said, "Oh, I didn't see you." I said, "I didn't see you." I was just going to turn in, and that would have been a real disaster. But I don't think so. I think if I had a bit more pace, I might have been able to put a bit more pressure on him. But as you know, the first 2 laps he was gone, and after that I was just really focused on trying to do my own thing. And then after a few laps, I was focused on trying to keep Stefan behind me, because he was, you know, as soon as I made a small mistake, he was there, he was back on me. So yeah, that wasn't the only opportunity, but I think I need to find some more pace before I can actually challenge for the lead.
Now, Mitch, you talk about the rivalry between yourself and Alessio, but of course you're teammates, so you can see each other's data. Talk about that work you're going to be doing tonight, looking at his data. How are you going to use that specifically to improve your own performance?
Well, basically I can see exactly what he's doing with his hands and feet and everything in between, so I can see what we're doing, like what I'm doing differently than him, and then as well, I don't know how different we are with the car. I think we're a little bit different, but I don't think that was the real difference. So I'm lucky I get to see that. You know, I'm kind of got the edge on everybody else, and I think even us at Absolute Racing have probably an advantage over the rest of everybody, because it's just us two. Well, there's actually 3 of us, Frankie as well, all pushing each other forward, and I think that's showing that it's, you know, giving Absolute a real edge.
Well, thank you very much. We'll let you go and cool off, and thanks for speaking with us. Congratulations.
Thanks. Thank you. Well, yeah, there you go. It's interesting. He was working hard, and you could see that. That was a 7-second lead in the end to Alessio, and to extend the championship points lead, that's impressive.
Well, you mentioned Alessio, and here he is, the points leader, and you've extended that lead, of course, with a win here. Must be pretty happy with your performance today.
Well, yeah, I mean, now, man, I can say I'm winner of Suzuka race, so that sounds really good for the CV, you know. I'm really proud of it, but no, it was a really good race. I mean, I was really confident with the car, but I can tell you it wasn't easy to stay on track. You need to be focused all the time. Every corner is really on the edge, so even though I was pulling away, you know, I wanted to push, I wanted to enjoy to drive, and that wasn't easy, but I enjoyed it really much.
Just talk about the push-to-pass strategy. We mentioned it in the commentary, but of course, when you had this big lead in Malaysia and then it was eradicated with the safety car, were you holding some in reserve and thinking, wow, I might need to hold on just in case that happens again, or you were trying to extend that lead?
Well, definitely. Especially here in Suzuka, there is no asphalt runoff or anything. So if someone does a mistake, there is you can expect a safety car. But also before the race, we had the team strategy. So that was to keep a few push to passes if we had to fight with Mitch. So that's what I did. But obviously the safety car didn't come this time, so it was a good feeling, and then I could use more or less a push to pass how I wanted. So that was nice.
Being that this is the first time that the Cup has been at Suzuka, a number of drivers have said that they felt that maybe the style suited them or didn't suit them. It's certainly a racer's circuit. It's an F1 circuit with a big history. Do you feel this suited you perhaps any better than Sepang, or it's just all circuits you take as you come?
I don't know. I mean, in Sepang I was really quick as well. So, I mean, in race 1, if I wouldn't have the safety car, the gap would have been even bigger than here. So, I don't know if the circuit suits me, but if it's the case, then I'm proud of it. But no, I think it's more technical. So you need to have the confidence with your car. You need to be confident. That's the most important. If you have the confidence, you can be fast anywhere. And this track require a lot of confidence.
And Alessio, just talking more generally, is there a difference you feel in your performance last year and this year? Last year you seemed to be pretty consistent, but not so many wins. This year already 2 wins out of 3 races. What is the difference?
It's difficult to say. I think last year I was already quick, and as you said, I was consistent. But I think this year I just have more experience, and it's really small details which make me better this year. I mean, something that you don't even really see on TV is maybe the way I work, the way I manage the tires. I don't know. The Pirelli also, may suits me quite well. But I feel really strong this year. Again, really confident, and I'm happy to work with my team, Absolute Racing, and I have some good teammates that, like he said, we can pull each other up. So. Everything is going in the right way. Also in Blancpain Asia, I was pretty strong in Buriram. So, no, it's just a good season so far. But we need to keep working and try to do again the same.
Good stuff. Well, best of luck for tomorrow's race as well, and we'll let you go. Thanks for talking with us.
Thanks, Alessio. Well done.
Well, Sean, we can take a quick look at the highlights of the race, and really, well, it was another action-packed race here for the Cup.
It certainly was the first one here ever in the 6-year history of the Cup at Suzuka International Circuit in Japan, and it turned up what we were hoping for. There he was, the pole man, 3rd pole in a row to Alessio Picariello, and he used that off the start. Interesting to hear that they didn't see each other, the 2 teammates, off the start, but certainly on the turn into turn 1, Mitch Gilbert was well aware of the number 15 car as it took the front running and led the field away, and from that point on, that was about as close as anybody got to the tail of Alessio Picariello. Good battle further back. Here's Rick Yoon coming off early in the race, fortunately able to keep it out the other side of the gravel. The KCMG supported driver kept the car going. Of course, he was the AM category winner last time out in Malaysia. Then the big move, big dive down the inside by KOU at the chicane. He went off the circuit to try and avoid contact, but ended up making that contact with the champion racing team driver Martin Rump. Unfortunately for Rump, that put a guard onto a wheel, and that wasn't what the teams needed to see, but certainly the Absolute team on screen watching this man just drive away from the field. And he did everything that he needed to do just to keep building on this championship advantage that he has so far in the 2017 season. Then another surprising moment, the number 1 car, 3-time champion, 22-time race winner, had a spin, which was most unusual. We'll certainly find out more about that between the 2 races and report in just what Alex Jung's thoughts are on that. And for the number 1 car, the Audi R8 LMS Cup car, teams were quite surprised to see it, as were we. But up front, it was going to be Alessio Picariello, as you say, Mark. 2 wins now from 3 starts this season. Impressive start to the championship. And then we had, of course, Mitch Gilbert across the line second, and a good result too for Stefan Riquelme to finish up with position 3.
Well, we talked about those, we've spoken to those top 3, but just further down the order, Sean Thong in 4th position, Marchie Lee finishing in 5th after starting down in 8th. Talk about their performances.
Well, that's certainly good, but we're talking about teams too. You heard Mitch Gilbert talk about he wasn't 100% happy, but the advantage he brought into this race, of course, was the success they could build on being part of the Absolute Racing team. And of course, in that team, the MGT team by Absolute is, of course, Alessio Picariello.
And just to look ahead to tomorrow as well, in 6th position today, starting from 6th, finishing in 6th. He held on to the position, if you were Frankie Chung. Tomorrow he starts in pole position. Can he hold on to it?
Well, there's every chance he may be able to, and he's another one who's really liking this circuit, and he needs a good result. You go back 2 seasons ago, he lost the championship by 1 point to Alex Young, but he hasn't had a lot of luck since then. So certainly for Frankie Chung, this would be his chance to shine, and I think he could probably do it.
And one thing that he will have in his favour is he won't have any weight ballast after today's race, whereas the drivers immediately behind him, Picariello and Mitch Gilbert, will have some ballast. So that should help him off the standing start, where we've seen in the past it particularly makes a difference. So Frankie can hold on to that position and then use his track position. Perhaps he can get that win that we've eluded him for some time.
Well, certainly, and the other issue that he has, of course, we're talking about this circuit is, or the other issue the other drivers have, is it's difficult to overtake. We saw it in this race. There were very few overtaking manoeuvres, and they were risky, as we saw with that move with KOU. It wasn't a desperate move. It was one of few opportunities you have in this lap, around 5.8 kilometres, to make a move forward. So you need to be careful. If you start in the front, you don't have that weight. We heard on the review of the Sepang round from Alessio Picariello that starting with that 50 kilos of success was the one ballast, was the one thing that actually slowed him down off the start of race 2 at Sepang. He had to slot into second behind Alex Young. So the pole man has the opportunity to get away. Then it's difficult to overtake. So really for Frankie Chung, he's got it all in front of him. He hopefully gets a good night's sleep and can come out and charge away at the front of this field tomorrow.
Thanks, Sean. Well, we talked about it in Malaysia. We've talked about it again here. We've seen it happening, this changing of the guard with the new generation of young drivers coming through. Let's take a look at some of those young drivers and why they're so dominant. Historically, the Cup's champions have been some of the more experienced drivers. But this year, the next generation is hoping to change that once and for all.
Alex is very quick, Alessio is quick, Mitch is quick.
Everyone have the equal chance to win this thing. 90% of the cars are really strong and able to win, but for sure Alex is there because of his experience, so he will always be on top.
I think Alessio is definitely the one to watch.
Alessio has proved that consistently he has been very, very fast. And in some occasions, I think he just proved that in a different level.
I think it's between Alessio and Alex. Last year they were, I think, in a class of their own.
It's too close to call. Alessio, Martin Ram, Mitch Gilbert is shown to be very strong. And don't forget the old guys, Marchie Lee and Frankie Chung.
Alex is a really quick driver, but I think most of us young drivers, we come from single-seater backgrounds. I think we can carry that experience and that competitiveness towards this year's championship.
Like any championship, it's going to be about consistency.
Last year was a pretty good statement from me. I won the most races, but I lacked consistency, so I think this year I'll bring more wisdom and more experience.
I think I just need to learn and work myself up, do more simulator, train harder fitness-wise, anything it takes. I learned a lot from last year, and I think I'm even faster this year, so everything looks even better.
Well, it's been a fantastic opening race here, Sean, in Suzuka, Japan. Well, let's hope for more of the same tomorrow morning our time in Asia, wherever you are in the world. Let's please hope that you can join us again then. But do keep watching. We have the press conference coming to you now.